I'd say many of us have had one of those nights, where we wake up the next day and either don't remember what happened the night before, or don't want to remember what happened the night before. Either way, our head hurts. This is a hangover, and they're tough to get through sometimes, and this phenomenon exists in the NFL as well. It's become somewhat commonplace for teams that lose the Super Bowl to have a hangover the next season, falling well short of the expectations they have for themselves. But who did it worst? Today we will be going over the 10 worst seasons by teams who made it to the Super Bowl the season before, only to have lost that game. And as we always do, we will be using C-score to make these determinations. As usual, a deeper explanation of C-score is available in the description of this video down below. 13 different teams dropped down to a negative C-score in the season after their Super Bowl loss, while 21 different teams failed to clear a C-score of 10. So there is quite a bit to choose from here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're ready to roll. We'll start with the 2004 Carolina Panthers at number 10. Fresh off their Cinderella run to Super Bowl 38, a game they only lost in the final seconds, the Panthers were only able to scrounge a record of 7-9. They were around the middle of the pack in both scoring and points allowed, giving them a slightly positive point differential. But their weaker strength of schedule did them little favors, settling their C-score at negative 2.248. After a 1-1 start to the season, the Panthers nosedived to 6 consecutive losses, 3 of them by multiple possessions. They got right with a road win over the 49ers, kicking off a 5-game winning streak and getting themselves into playoff contention at 6-7 in the weak NFC. They then lost 2 of their final 3 games, both of them by 3 points, with one of them in overtime. Superstar wide receiver Steve Smith suffered a broken leg in their opening day loss, preventing Carolina's improved overall offensive performance from exploding into elite status. Carolina's 7-9 record left them well behind the NFC South champion Atlanta Falcons, but they were only 1 game behind the 2 8-8 wildcard entrants. It's deja vu all over again. Carolina has only been to the Super Bowl twice, but both of their follow-up seasons were less than stellar. Here at number 9 are the Carolina Panthers of 2016. Their 15-1 regular season record and trip to Super Bowl 50 ended in disappointing fashion against the Denver Broncos. A 6-10 season the following year only added to that disappointment. They were outscored on the year as well, leading to a negative 3.925 C-score. An opening game loss to the Broncos in a Super Bowl rematch set the tone for the season to come. By week 3, they had already taken their second loss, more than they had the season before. In short order, they were 1-5 heading into the bye week, from which point they only went 500 the rest of the way. The Panthers went from first in points scored and 6th in points allowed the season before to 15th and 26th this season. They endured many firsts, none of which were good. The first 15-1 team to miss the playoffs the next year, and the first 15-1 team to finish last in their division the next year. This after winning the division for 3 straight seasons. They finished 3 games out of the playoffs and were never a serious threat all season long. The Denver Broncos kicked off the 1990s in suboptimal fashion, following up their Super Bowl 24 appearance with a paltry 5-11 record. Yet, compared to the savage beating the 49ers laid on them, it could have been worse. They were outscored in that game by 45 points, but they were only outscored on the entire 1990 season by 43. Against the 3rd hardest schedule in the league, they were below average in both points scored and points allowed, culminating in a negative 4.639 C-score. Denver's hangover wasn't immediately obvious. A 2-1 start gave way to a 3-4 record. Not great, but not disqualifying either. 6 straight losses that dropped them to a 3-10 record, all coming out of the NFL's newly introduced bye week, did the trick though. 3 of those losses came by a single possession, as did 4 of their other losses, giving them a 2-7 record in 1-score games, including back-to-back losses by a single point. All told, they gave up 148 more points than they did in 1989, more than 9 points per game. Their record flipped from 11-5 to 5-11, and their position in the AFC West also flipped, from first to last. The New York Giants have only ever lost in the Super Bowl once, getting crushed by the Baltimore Ravens in Super Bowl 35. Their follow-up season in 2001 was bad enough to get them ranked at number 7 on this list. They were right around slightly below average across the board, a 7-9 record, being outscored by 27 points, fewer than 2 per game, and they finished 21st in points scored. They were right in the middle of the pack at number 16 in points allowed and in strength of schedule, all good for a minus 5.164 C-score. The 2000 Giants weren't highly thought of, despite clinching home field advantage throughout the playoffs and winning the NFC Championship game in dominating fashion, a fact even acknowledged by Giants owner Wellington Mara as he accepted the George Halas Trophy. The 2001 season showed a lot of the criticism to be legitimate, as they went from a 7-0 record in one-score games to 5-4. A 3-1 start to the season, with every win coming by multiple possessions, gave way to a 4-8 finish, complete with 2 separate 3-game losing streaks and a 2-game losing streak to end things. At 7-7, they had a chance to sneak into the playoffs, but those 2 losses to end the season left them 2 games out and tied for 3rd in the NFC East. At number 6 are the 2006 Seattle Seahawks, the only team to appear on this list with a winning record at 9-7. After losing Super Bowl 40 to the Pittsburgh Steelers with a great deal of controversy associated with that game, Seattle had a tough time recovering. Despite that winning record, and despite playing the league's easiest schedule, Seattle found a way to get outscored by 6 points on the season, and with nothing else special standing out about them, they finished with a C-score of negative 7.083. The major reason for Seattle's weak strength of schedule was playing in the NFC West, 2006's weakest division, by virtue of every team sporting a negative point differential. But Seattle was able to hold off the small fries that were the Rams, 49ers, and Cardinals to win the division and get back into the playoffs. The NFC wildcard teams were nothing special either, with the 8-8 Giants and 9-7 Cowboys taking those spots. Seattle hosted Dallas in the divisional round, winning the somewhat infamous Tony Romo game. They then put up a huge fight against the top-seeded Bears in Chicago, only falling by a field goal in overtime. Seattle's winning pedigree served them well in this playoff run, but it doesn't overcome their highly lackluster season. The year Seattle did make the Super Bowl marks the season that the Philadelphia Eagles had their Super Bowl hangover. The 2005 crew ranks in at number 5, after falling to a 6-10 record in the aftermath of their loss to the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 39. That appearance was a long time coming after 3 straight NFC title game losses, and it may have taken their toll on them. Their 18th place finish in points scored, and their 27th place finish in points allowed, albeit against a difficult schedule, brought their C-score down to negative 7.467. The hangover for the Eagles wasn't so apparent early in the season though. They started the year at 3-1 and were sitting in a comfortable spot at 4-2. At that point, it became apparent that this wasn't the same Philly team of years past. They lost 4 games in a row to drop to 4-6, then went on 2 separate 1-2 runs to end the season. An early season blowout of the hapless San Francisco 49ers was the only time they won a game by multiple possessions, putting up a 1-5 record in that department. They finished 4 games behind in the wildcard chase and 5 games behind in the division race after 4 straight division titles. This season set the standard in the NFC East though, as every single season since has seen the division champion fail to repeat. We come back to the Denver Broncos again at number 4, this time with the 1988 team. The season in between their 3 trips to the Super Bowl in 4 seasons. Despite playing the league's easiest schedule, Denver could only manage an 8-8 record while being outscored on the season and finishing in the bottom half of the league in both points scored and points allowed. Only their record was average, and these other below average results lowered their C-score to negative 7.531. The entire 1988 season was an exercise in inconsistency for the Broncos. They did put together a 3-game winning streak after a 1-3 start to offer some hope, but they never could find that next gear to get them over the top. And they really didn't need much, as the AFC West was very much there for the taking. The Seahawks were the only team in the division to have a winning record or a positive point differential, and even then, they were only at 9-7 and plus 10, helping explain Denver's overall soft schedule. In the end, Denver missed out on the division crown by a single game, due in part to getting swept by Seattle, and the wild card was even further out of reach, finishing 2 games behind in that race. After taking one of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl and in playoff history, the St. Louis Rams hit a major roadblock in 2002, ranking here at number 3. That means that every team that lost in the Super Bowl to the Patriots during the 2000s fell off the next season. The Rams finished the season at 7-9, and their record-breaking offense of the previous 3 seasons was nowhere to be seen, finishing 10th from the bottom in points scored, matching their ranking in points allowed, and ending the season with a C-score of negative 8.363. Losing Super Bowl 36 appeared to linger with the Rams early in the season, as they came out and lost their first 5 games. With the season seemingly already over, they came roaring back with a 5-game winning streak. With that momentum and their recent pedigree, the Rams appeared to be the most dangerous team in the league. But a 3-game road trip followed, and with it came a 3-game losing streak, 2 close games, and an annihilation at the hands of their former head coach Dick Vermeil in Kansas City. That ended all hope, with the Rams giving up their perch atop the NFC West by 3 games to the 49ers and finishing 2.5 games out of a wildcard spot. The first 8 teams on this list were but an appetizer. Now, the horror show begins. At number 2 are the 2003 Oakland Raiders, who got destroyed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Super Bowl 37 and then got destroyed by the NFL at large. They put up a 4-12 record with a minus 109 point differential, both of which are the worst marks ever put up by a team coming off a Super Bowl appearance. Their strength of schedule was their only saving grace, leaving their C-score at negative 15.724. The Raiders had been so close, yet so far the previous 3 seasons, losing Rich Gannon in a low-scoring AFC title game loss to the Ravens, being the victims of the Tuck Rule, and losing in humiliating fashion against their former head coach in the Super Bowl could have either steeled their resolve or given them reason to fall apart. They chose the latter. A 2-2 start gave way to a 2-10 finish, with their own head coach calling his own team the dumbest in America. 20 seasons have followed this one, and the Raiders still seek their next playoff victory. They not only finished tied for last in the division, they finished tied for last in the entire NFL, a year after entering the Super Bowl as the consensus favorite to win it. But taking the cake at number 1 are the 1999 Atlanta Falcons. Seen by many as a fluke when they made it to Super Bowl 33 against the Denver Broncos, Atlanta did nothing to quell those naysayers either in that game or in this season. Their core numbers are slightly better than the 03 Raiders, a 5-11 record and a negative 95 point differential. But their strength of schedule was much weaker, making Atlanta's C-score the lowest of them all at negative 17.984. An off-season holdout and subsequent in-season injury to Jamal Anderson grabbed the headlines for the Falcons this season, but his situation wasn't anywhere near the sole reason for Atlanta's collapse. They simply weren't the same team, and after a season-opening loss to the Minnesota Vikings, in a rematch of the previous season's NFC Championship game, it was all downhill. 0-1 became 0-4, became 2-9, became 5-11. Yet because the 5-team NFC West was so weak, Atlanta finished third with that record. That said, they were 8 games out of first place, and 3 games out of the wildcard spot in a season where 2 teams were able to claim those spots at just 8-8. Woe be unto the Falcons. Looking at the top 10 as a whole, there are 2 things that stand out. After gradual decreases in C-score, we see that huge leap between numbers 3 and 2, leaving that top 2 in a league on their own. The other thing is just how close these teams are chronologically. The 2 Broncos entries and the 2016 Panthers are essentially outliers, as the other 7 teams on the countdown only encompass an 8-year period. The only team left out of that time was the 2000 Rams, who weren't exactly stellar that season either, especially defensively. In fact, after the 1997 New England Patriots won their wildcard game against the Miami Dolphins, only the 2006 Seahawks won a playoff game as a Super Bowl loser the year before, until the Cardinals pulled off the trick in 2009, and even Seattle couldn't avoid this list. This is truly the time period where the notion of a hangover for the Super Bowl loser was ensconced in the collective minds of football fans. Thank you so much for watching and for staying on this long. I've gotten a few requests to do this video, so I hope I was able to live up to your expectations for it. Please take a moment to give it a like and to share it around. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ding that bell icon so you don't miss out on future videos. Let me know what you think about all of this. Is it surprising that only 2 teams before 1999 made the top 10? Or does that make sense given the changes brought forth by the salary cap and free agency? Is there anyone you thought was too high or too low? Or maybe a team you think doesn't belong or wasn't included that should have been? I'm looking forward to hearing all your thoughts. Thank you once again, and until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.